Ursula coming to London and meeting with Starmer, you're absolutely right in the sense that obviously their main topic is going to be Ukraine and all of that. But the reality, the underlying substance of it is one further big step, one big step at a time towards bringing Britain back into the EU. I mean, this is the agenda. And by the way, if you follow the British media, you can see this. You can see that two of the most strident pro-Ukraine, pro-Zelensky, anti-Trump media outlets in Britain are the Financial Times and The Guardian. And they're constantly saying that what Britain now needs to do is to make a choice between the United States and the EU. And of course, it goes without saying that what they're saying, what Britain should do, what Starmer should do, which is, of course, exactly what he wants to do, which is to turn back towards the EU. And the objective, to be clear, is to get Britain back into the EU, not parts of the EU, to take it completely back in, to reverse Brexit entirely, and to do so as quickly as possible before elections happen in Britain. There is a bigger story here as well, because one of the most extraordinary things of the last couple of days, the last week or so, is that the Americans presented their plan for a final settlement of the conflict in Ukraine, or at least a settlement of the conflict in Ukraine. I'm not sure how final it would really be, but anyway, a settlement of the conflict in Ukraine, which is basically the Kellogg plan. Now, the Kellogg plan, I don't think it has any prospect of success, but at least it does take into account some of the realities that the Russians occupy huge territories of eastern Ukraine, that they are in control of Crimea, that none of that is going to be reversed, that the Russians adamantly oppose Ukraine joining NATO, that so long as Ukraine exercises or purports to exercise or intends to exercise the right to join NATO, the conflict in Ukraine is going to continue. The Europeans reject that wholly. They rejected the plan in its entirety. They backed Zelensky to the hilt when he rejected the plan entirely. I was reading in the British media, UN officials named EU officials, including a political ally in Germany of Friedrich Merz, and this person is a member of the CDU and a named MP within the CDU, say that for the Europeans, they have two red lines. One is recognition of Crimea, or indeed of any Russian territory, or any Russian-controlled territory. There must be no recognition of them, because that would supposedly destroy the rules-based order that has preserved peace in Europe and all that nonsense. That's one thing they said. The other is that there can be no question of in any way compromising Ukraine's right to join NATO. That is an absolute inviolate thing. Now, notice that they are not coming up with any alternative peace proposal of their own. The war in Ukraine is being lost. They've heard that the Americans are preparing to walk away. The amount of military equipment being sent to Ukraine from the United States is diminishing. They're in no position to replace it, and they know that perfectly well. So they're not coming up with any peace proposal. They are rejecting the American peace proposal, which at least is based on some of the realities. They want to continue this conflict with Russia in Ukraine. And it's clear, given that Ukraine is losing the war, that they are prepared to sacrifice Ukraine to that end. Now, the question is why? Now, I've come to the conclusion that for the Europeans, for Ursula and her people, for Merz even, it is no longer a question of defeating Russia. It is no longer a question of preserving Ukraine. It is not even about keeping the United States involved in Europe. It is about preserving the European Union. It's all about now the existence of the EU itself. Because from a European point of view, what they've come to believe, and I think, by the way, that they are right about this, is that if there is a peace agreement over Ukraine, it will shatter EU unity, probably beyond repair, in the sense that the Baltic states, Poland will reject such an agreement, whatever its form, whereas other countries, not just Hungary and Slovakia, but big countries like Italy will accept it, and they will start voting if the EU Centre tries to preserve the sanctions against Russia. They will start voting, these big countries will start voting in the EU Council to have vetoing against further extensions of the sanctions, causing the entire sanctions regime to break down. Now, that is, for the EU Centre, a critical danger. It is almost an existential risk, because exactly as you said at the start of the program, they have now built the entire project of EU integration, and, by the way, of bringing Britain back into the EU. They built it around hostility to Russia, hostility to Putin, this idea that Europe is going to be constructed on the back of opposing, the Russian hordes that are supposedly on the brink of invading Europe and taking it all over. So this is what it has all devolved into now.
Exactly. You want money for climate change? You got to do it because of Putin. You want money for the military? We got to do it because of Putin. We need a fund for this or that, for infrastructure. Well, we got to do it because of Putin. We want to reverse Brexit. We got to do it because of Putin. Everything now is built around Project Ukraine, even more specifically around Russia. Yes. So Russia is going to serve all of the EU's purposes, all of its slush funds, whatever it needs to do. Censorship, you got to censor because of Putin. Cancel elections, well, we got to cancel elections because of Putin. So Russia is key. Russia is the platform, the policy of the European Union. It's the reason that Europe exists now. Is Russia?
Yes,
That's it.
Absolutely.
So it's basically they need time. What the EU is fighting for is time.
That's right.
And I wonder what their timeline is. Is their timeline another year, a year and a half, in the sense that they're saying, you know what, let's wait out Trump.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to beat the United States.
No.
We're a vassal to the United States.
Yes.
We are a vassal to the United States. We know it. So let's wait out Trump till the midterms.
Exactly.
And then maybe we'll get the Democrats in there, and then they can start investigations on Trump, and then we're in the clear.
Wow.
Or is it, let's wait out Trump until the next election?
I think that the key is the midterms. Because the other thing about Ukraine is that Ukraine is the issue of Ukraine, the topic of Ukraine, not only helps the EU to preserve its own unity, but it's also the issue, the one issue that the Democrats have, and which is bringing them all together. Because at the moment, the Democrats look to be in a very, very bad shape indeed. I mean, they're continuing apparently to sink in spite of all of Trump's problems. But clearly, you want the Democrats to come back strong in the midterms to at least recapture maybe the House, even if they can't manage the Senate, but at least something to put Trump on the defensive, to then bog Trump down in all kinds of investigations and all of those sort of things. To state it again, if your priority was not just to preserve Ukraine, but to preserve the existing setup in Ukraine, which is what they say, they would be backing the Kellogg plan.
Yeah.
I mean, the Kellogg plan is the best possible plan Ukraine can hope to get when Trump says that if this goes on long enough, there won't be any Ukraine left. What he said, in his latest Truth Social post, that in 3 years you won't have your country. He's absolutely right. But no one in Europe addresses that issue. No one in Europe actually addresses the realities on the ground.